Hello dear learners and welcome to this session on consonants. So today we are going to see about the consonants of English. So consonants is the term itself is derived from the word consonatium, and it means a sound produced with the help of another. Usually it is the sound produced from vowel sounds, and it's produced with some kind of obstruction or friction in the vocal tracts, and there's also an airstream mechanism that is produced because of when these sounds are produced, and they are described as the form of the flesh and the skeleton of the English language. So they give shape or they add shape to the English language. And consonants, we have these are the consonants that are listed. So we have the different sounds, the consonant sounds in the English language. So consonants can be classified based on their voicing, the place of articulation, and the manner of articulation. So what is voicing? So when sounds are produced with the vocal cords wide apart and an open glottis, they are called as voiceless sounds or breathed sounds. So the sounds p, k, t, f, s, th, sh, h, as in peel, keen, ten, fine, sin, thin, ship, hug. They're all voiceless sounds because during the production of these sounds, the vocal cords are wide apart and the glottis is also, we see, open. Next is voiced sounds. Voiced sounds are produced when the vocal cords are loosely held together and the pressure of the air from the lungs makes them open and close rapidly, and there's a vibration of the vocal tracts. So sounds like b, d, g, j, v, s, m. They all have a vibrato to it, and they are called as voiced sounds. So the vocal cords vibrate and these sounds are produced. So you have voiced and voiceless sounds in consonants. Next is based on the place of articulation, consonants can be classified. So when where the airstream is obstructed in the vocal tract, such as the lips, teeth or tongue, that is called the place of articulation. So based on it you have a number of consonants. So the first classification is bilabial. So for bilabial sounds, the articulators are the two lips, and we see they both meet. P, b, m. So pile, mile. In labiodental we see the lower lip is the active articulator and the upper teeth are the passive articulator. So in place of articulation you have an active articulator or the passive articulator. So for bilabial you have both the lips, whereas in labiodental you have the lip and the teeth. So for lip and the teeth you have sounds like f and v, fine and mine. The next type of sound is the dental sound. So the dental sounds are produced with the upper teeth as the passive articulator, and the active articulator might either be the tongue tip or the tongue blade. So it's also called as interdental sounds. Sounds like th, the, thin, then. So the th and the sound are dental sounds. Next is alveolar sounds. In the alveolar sounds we see the alveolar ridge is the passive articulator and the active articulator is the tongue blade or the tongue tip. And the sounds t as in tin, d as in din, n as in near, s as in sin, z as in zip, L as in L are all alveolar sounds. Moving on, the next type of sounds, consonant sounds, are post-alveolar. In this, the tip of the tongue is the active articulator and the part just behind the teeth ridge is called the passive articulator. The R sound as in try and dry are post-alveolar, and palato-alveolar sounds are produced with the alveolar ridge as the passive articulator and the active articulator is either the tongue tip or the tongue blade, and the front of the tongue is raised in the direction of the hard palate. So the sounds sh as in sheep, ch as in cheap, j as in cheap. So sh, ch, j are palato-alveolar sounds. Moving on to the next, we have the palatal sounds. The palatal sounds are the active articulator is the front of the tongue and the passive articulator is the hard palate. The y sound as in yes, but it's represented with the letter J. Next, we have the velar sounds. The velar sounds, in this, we see the active articulator is the back of the tongue and the passive articulator is the soft palate. The sounds k, ng, and g, as in back, bang, bag. So the k, ng, and g sounds are velar sounds. So far we saw the place of articulation and consonants being classified. And moving on, we also have two more, which are the uvular and the glottal sounds. So in uvular sounds, we see the active articulator is the rear part of the back of the tongue and the passive articulator is the uvula. This we do not have any word in English to describe it, but you have the Urdu word for pen, kalam. And then you have glottal sounds, during the production of which, it's produced at the glottis, and the two vocal cords are the active articulators. The initial sound h as in hat. So this was about the consonants based on the place of articulation. They can be classified based as labial, bilabial and labiodental, dental. You have interdental, alveolar and post-alveolar. Then you have the palatal sounds, that is the palatal and the palato-alveolar. Then you have the velar sounds, velar, uvula and glottal sounds. This is a classification based on place of articulation. Next is according to the manner of articulation. So according to manner of articulation, also consonants can be described. So under this, we need to know the term stricture. So what is stricture? It is the way in which the passage of air is restricted by the various organs of speech. And for manner of articulation, stricture occurs. So how the airflow is obstructed, such as stops, fricatives or affricates, the consonants are described and classified. So the first sounds are plosive sounds. So in plosives, there's complete closure and sudden release. So complete closure of what and sudden release of what we need to know. So here the speech organs are closed and the oral and the native cavity are completely closed. So we see that the oral and the nasal cavity are closed, and so airflow is blocked. And then there's an upbringing pressure in the oral cavity, and then there's a sudden release of air, audible air. So this is also called as aspiration. The audible puff of air that is released is called as an aspiration. So sounds like pin, p, tin, t, kin, k, they're all voiceless sounds, they're all plosives. Then bin, bh, din, d, gun, gh, they're all voice sounds, they're all plosives. So for all this there's a closure, complete closure, and then there's a sudden release of air. Next, we have the affricates, wherein there is complete closure and slow release. So we see there is a blockage of airstream in the oral cavity, and then there is a slow release of air. But this also causes an audible friction. So the sounds ch as in cheese, which is a voiceless sound, then y, j as in jungle. So you have the ch sound and the j sound, which are affricates. Moving on, we have the nasal sounds. So for nasal sounds, we have complete oral closure. So sounds that are articulated when the stricture is, complete oral closure are called as nasal sounds. That is, the oral passage is blocked and the nasal passage is open and air escapes through the nasal passage. So the sounds m as in some, n as in sun, ng as in sing. They are voiced sounds. Next, we have the trills or the roll consonants, also called as intermittent closure. So here we see that in the articulation, the stricture is intermittent closure, and they are called as trills or rolled consonants. The active articulator, it strikes against the passive articulator several times, and between the active and passive articulator escapes intermittently. So the R sound pronounced by Scottish people as in red, ran, So multiple times we see that, they roll the tongue and the active articulator hits against the passive articulator. Same thing when the active articulator strikes against the passive articulator just once, it flaps back. It's called as taps or flaps. The sounds that we as Indians produce vary. So it's just one, the r sound just touches and it flaps back. So this is about the trills and the rolled consonants. Next we have the fricatives, which are also called as close approximation. So sounds that are articulated with structure of closed approximation are called as fricatives. Here the nasal passage of air is closed and air escapes through a narrow gap in the oral passage. So sounds like f in fine, v in vine, thin, th, then, z, sh, z, sh and h are all fricative sounds. Next you have the laterals. The laterals are partial closure. So under this, sounds that are articulated with a structure of complete closure in the center of the vocal tract, but air escapes it along the sides of the tongue without any friction are called as laterals. That is, the nasal passage of air is closed and from the sides of the tongue, are lowered and air escapes also along the sides of the tongue. L sound as in love is a lateral. And then you have the open approximation, also called as the frictionless continuance or semivowels or approximates. So sounds that are produced with a structure of open approximation are called as frictionless continuance or semivowels or approximates. And over here the nasal passage of air is closed and air escapes through the oral passage, but there is no friction. The sound y as in yes and w as in wet. Next, so this is an example of how transcription can happen of phonetical symbols and how within the two slashes the consonant sounds are represented and also the vowels. So today's class we did see about the consonants, how they can be described based on their voicing, the place of articulation and the manner of articulation. So I hope all the concepts were clear. So happy learning and thank you for joining.